The DEFY series by Zenith has come a very long way. From the newest releases in 2022 all the way back to the watch that I want to talk about today, and even beyond. Let's take some time to have an in-depth look at the history of the DEFY series, why it is important, and all the details about the one watch design that started it all, with this 1970 Zenith DEFY on the Time Worn channel. If you're interested in the general history of Zenith, there's a video about one of the earliest wristwatches by the brand on this channel, and I'll leave a link at the end of this video. And the DEFY series goes just as far back as that one, to the beginning of the 20th century, when the trademark Défi, French for challenge, was registered by Zenith's founder Georges Favre-Jacot for a new line of pocket watches. Considering wristwatches, we can forward until 1969, when the DEFY line saw the light of day. A special year to start a very avant-garde automatic three-hander watch line, when everyone, and especially Zenith themselves, of course focused on the newfangled automatic chronographs, like they did with their El Primero movements. Well, being overshadowed at that time didn't hurt the model line in the long run, I would say, since the DEFY line is still quite strongly represented, with the newest additions being the whole DEFY Skyline line, and several new DEFY Extreme versions. Back to the piece right here. This is the actual first generation, as I would call it, of the Octagonal DEFY with its intriguing 14-sided bezel, which already implies that there's a multitude of versions, so get ready. In 1969, in the beginning so to speak, there was this 37mm octagonal version, also called the Miura case, probably referring to the Lamborghini Miura of the same time period and its exotic design. It was available with 5 different dials. 2 with chunky markers, like this one with the khaki-colored Fume dial and a white version, and 3 with trapezoidal elongated markers, also in khaki Fume, white, and also black or charcoal, the last one seemingly being the rarest. The watch came on the original GAY FRERES leather bracelet, which is still on this one right here. Nice and rattly, and it completes the funky look quite perfectly. And I will explain why GAY FRERES bracelets were so important later on. This first generation was powered by the 2552 PC automatic movement by Zenith with 21,600 amplitudes per hour. And starting in the early 70s afterwards, you can find the 28,800 on the dial, which displays the change towards the newer 2562 PC movement with a higher beat rate of 28,800 amplitudes per hour. I was under the impression that all the DEFYs with the updated movement carried this 28,800 signage on the dial, which put every watch without this into the earliest period from 69 to early 70s. But don't be fooled. Thanks to an avid DEFY collector's hint, I found out that they dropped the 28,800 signage after an initial period. Therefore, it was just a brief period of on-dial marketing for this step up towards the higher beat rate. Thus, in order to actually identify the movement and date the watch itself correctly, a look inside is still mandatory. Or at least have some macro footage that you can slow down to see if the second hand ticks 6 or 8 times every second. Additional to the updated movement, 2 new outgoing dial colors were added with the turquoise and burgundy, and to top it off, an all 18-karat gold deluxe version with 2 dials. Alongside this overhaul, which I would call the second generation, a 39mm version in a tonneau-shaped case was also released, which is more in line with the case of the famous Espada El Primero chronograph by Zenith. Maybe it was a move to bring the DEFY closer to the chronograph models that seem to overshadow the three-hand watch in terms of sales, which was not necessary in my opinion, since the DEFY series already provided enough unique selling points besides the cool design of the case, which by the way was octagonal before Gerald Genta came up with the Royal Oak in '72. It featured 300 meters water resistance, a patented movement suspension, and a flexible circular shock absorption system, as well as a hardened mineral glass, which was quite a step up from the typical acrylic crystals in terms of durability at that time. Calling it a vault was not far-fetched, and it was indeed advertised as such. Besides the aforementioned versions, there were also 3 ladies models at a smaller size, but we are not finished yet. I have to mention the DEFY Subsea line, which went even further in terms of diving capabilities, upping the water resistance to 600 meters, easily identifiable at the 430 crown position, unique set of hands and bakelite bezel. To further widen the range, in 1972 two sub-C variations were released which were closer to the original looks. No bakelite bezel, and a more conservative set of hands in blue, beige and black. If you aren't confused yet, I'll add one more. I would put it in the sub-C line immediately, since it has the 430 crown position, but this one is a rare standard 300 meter version with a silver minute track. Phew! This line of watches was important to Zenith, and they kept expanding it. Thankfully so in my opinion, as each edition brought forth some bold colors and features, and I took the time to at least show them all because it definitely broadened my opinion of the whole Defy lineup. To keep up the quite illustrious timeline, the Defy line continued with very multifaceted entries during the 80s. The Defy Surf models, for example, piqued my interest in particular. In the 90s, well, the 90s being what they were. Since 1999, Zenith became part of the LVMH conglomerate, and the design language became more of what we are accustomed to by Zenith today. Now, if you're all up in the new releases, you might know the looks of this watch right here very well. The A3642 had a revival edition released in 2022, keeping everything very close to the original. A sapphire crystal, updated lume, no T besides the Swiss made, and a display case pack to show the Elite 670 movement sums up the visible differences. From the revival back to its grandfather, I already talked about some of the specifics of the First Generation DEFY, but let's complete the picture with some measurements I took. 37mm in diameter, but be advised, this is from 3 to 9 o'clock without the crown. This parameter increases to 40mm from 4 to 10 o'clock due to the case design. This makes it quite a nice fit for my 17.5cm or 7-inch wrist, in my opinion, even though my taste rarely leans towards watches much smaller than 39mm in diameter. From lug to lug, I measured a distance of 44mm, and the height comes in at 13mm with a slightly domed mineral crystal on top at the thickest point. The lug width measures 22mm, and the amazing GAY FRERES leather bracelet tapers down to 16mm towards the Zenith branded folding clasp. Inside the clasp you can find the GAY FRERES signage together with a manufacturing date for the bracelet, 1970 in this case. Also note that the end links, if original, should each be signed with a tiny ZC, almost too small for the naked eye. In total, including the bracelet, we have a weight of only 96 grams, and the crown is signed with the Zenith star and securely screwed down. To give a short perspective on what makes GAY FRERES bracelets so special. They were the bracelet producer for many of the big players at the time, like Rolex, Vacheron Constantin, Patek Philippe, etc. You get the picture. Back then, bracelets were seen as an expensive extra to the watch, difficult to produce, and were almost exclusively not made in-house. Filling this gap, the GAY FRERES SA has been around since 1835. And were responsible, for example, for producing the amazing bracelet on the original Royal Oak and Nautilus. So keep an eye out for them in the vintage watch world. To conclude the short historical detour, the bracelet manufacturer was bought up by Rolex in 1998 and still exists today. Now about the dial of this watch. It screams 70s with the color gradient from beige to darker brown on the outside. I love it. The hour markers and sword hands originally featured tritium lume, as the small T at 6 o'clock also indicates. The hands on the watch right here are a replacement though, since the color of the lume does not match and it is too bright for a 50-plus-year-old tritium. The date is framed in a trapezoidal window and has no quick setting option, by the way, so prepare for alternating between 18 and 24 o'clock to adjust it. About the price? Here's where it gets even more interesting. These pieces of horological history, and with that I mean the first generation Octagonal DEFY specifically, can be found for around 1,200 to 2,000 euros in Europe, without box and papers, which is a great price considering the significance of this piece. But have a good look at the case, as the edges need to be sharp and as unpolished as possible for the watch to unfold its full potential. To wrap this up, the DEFY series started with a bang in my opinion, and Zenith acknowledged this with their revival series. But I think the original, early versions of the DEFY from the late 60s to 70s are still truly undervalued gems in terms of design, but also purely based on their specs. I hope you enjoyed this more in-depth look on one of Zenith's sleepers as much as I did putting it all together. And see you in the next one on the Time Worn channel.